next 10 minutes are going to be about AI. I know there are a lot of buzzwords around AI, especially in marketing. A lot of marketers in this room probably are also using AI maybe to generate content, to create creatives around their brand and marketing strategy. But today's session is more about how to frame the right performance marketing strategy using AI, and how do you reach the right user in the most optimized way using AI in marketing. Before even jumping into the right strategies, which we've gathered across working along with many clients, before even jumping into that, I would like to jump into the enormity of how large the target market is for so many brands and so many companies out there. But at the same time, I would love for you to understand that although the market is enormous, but finding the right set of users for you requires the right and correct set of strategies. That's what this session is going to be about. I'm Shivangi Singh. I lead partnerships at Moloko in India. In my career spanning over 10 years, I've worked with companies like Google, Amazon, and also have been at the side wherein I was framing the brand strategies for companies like P&G and ITC. So I've been at multiple sides of marketing, at the side where I was framing the brand strategies, as well as at the side where I'm now consulting multiple businesses across India and APAC to frame the right marketing strategies for them. You see the sticker moving, and come to a number of around 1 trillion. That's the enormity of the kind of opportunities which exist within the next 10 minutes while I complete this session. So these are the number of ads you can show to a user in the entire globe right now. This number is huge. Huge is always good, is it? Probably not, because when you're looking at a very, very large number, it's really difficult to find the exact user which makes sense for your business. And that's why it becomes even more important in today's world, wherein every user has a smartphone, everyone's looking at brand ads, performance marketing ads. Each app, website is just loaded with ads. How do you really find that exact user? How do you ensure that you are showing the right ad to the right user? That's what this session is going to be all about. Where to find that user? These are the number of total apps which exist globally right now, 2.8 million. That's a vast number. Even in India, this number is pretty huge, right? You'll be surprised to know, I think even in the previous session, we spoke a lot about Google, Meta, Amazon, how some of these companies have literally monopolized the entire advertising world. So these are essentially the walled gardens of digital advertising. However, the number of apps are enormous. You'll be surprised to know that on an average, a user spends almost 50% of their times on the walled gardens, which is Google and Meta ecosystem, versus the rest of the independent app ecosystem, which is so huge. Again, I think a lot of marketers in this room spend enormous amount of time, money, and energies on optimizing their spends on Google and Meta, whereas they're leaving this entire independent app ecosystem alone and not really focusing on this part of the digital economy. Moving on, 2 billion, that's the kind of reach which these independent apps actually bring to brands, which are probably being ignored by the marketers in this room right now. And how do you exactly reach these users? How do you exactly gather the eyeballs of users on those apps? And how is exactly AI really reshaping all of that right now? I'm going to talk about that now. These are the 3 very powerful insights which I'm going to speak about. They have evolved a lot because of how AI is shaping up technology and marketing, and that's why they become even more relevant in today's time. Firstly, marketers are leaving money on the table by overlooking the independent app ecosystem. We already saw that the independent app ecosystem is pretty enormous, a user spending almost similar time on these apps versus some of the social media and entertainment apps which we keep talking about. Let's see, in terms of numbers, what does the research say? The first graph is about all the consumer apps. The total spend of these apps is somewhere around $45 billion globally. However, if you look at the percentage spends across marketing channels, it's all concentrated between Meta, Google, and some of the other walled gardens. Roughly only 12% of their spends on the independent app ecosystem, which we previously saw was pretty huge. Whereas if you look at the gaming apps who are there to acquire users, they spend almost 35% of their spends on independent app ecosystem. But what does that tell about efficiency? How do you differentiate whether gaming is doing the right thing versus the consumer apps? Let's see what does the survey and the analysis really point at. So we diversified the spends and analyzed two cohorts of apps, the set of apps which were spending mainly on Google and Meta, and the another set of apps which had diversified their spend on Google and Meta. These were the two cohorts where an A/B testing was done. The results were shocking to many, but not to me. There was a 116% increase in day 30 ROAS when spends are diversified beyond Google and Meta. So that really tells you the power of diversifying your spends on the right channels. Not saying, or I'm not pointing to the fact that you should be working with hundreds of channels to ensure there is efficiency, but finding those right channels beyond the top ones really helps you to do the right decision making when it comes to improving your ROAS beyond a certain set of channels, especially when it comes to incrementality. Secondly, we've been talking a lot about how user behavior has changed. I'm sure a lot of you, you start your day by looking at news, looking at your stock portfolio. Some of the fintech companies, you open your portfolios, see the apps, right? Over the day, you use apps like ChatGPT, Claude, ensure that you're working at 100% of your efficiency. Later on, it changes to using shopping apps, social media apps, OTT, et cetera, right? So your consumption of apps throughout the day is really diversified. It's not that you're only on Instagram throughout the day, right? That's what our surveys and numbers also point at. There are peaks and troughs of different category of apps, right? For example, finance is where you start your day. Entertainment's pretty much stable. It peaks after work probably. Social media, again, has its own peaks and troughs. Generative AI is probably used during the peak working hours. And shopping takes up when you are about to sleep, you remember you have to order something online, things like those, right? However, if you look at the spends which you are doing when it comes to marketing, your spends are really concentrated in a couple of buckets, which is social media, as well as some part of the entertainment bucket, right? There are so many categories where you can catch the user at the right time, during the right intent, and that's what you're probably missing on when you're not spending on the independent app ecosystem. One might argue that I am just chasing the top 1% of the users, and I'm probably able to find them with the right intent on the walled gardens at the right time. They are not as diversified. However, you are mistaken, and we'll look at some of those data points as well. What we are seeing is that, in fact, high-value, high-intent users act with more variety and frequency throughout the day rather than a lower-value user. So your premium user is more likely than not buying subscriptions or looking at ads across multiple apps rather than a low-value user. This particular number is more relevant for a finance app. If we have marketers from fintech as a category present here, this will become really relevant for you. So for example, a power user who's using finance app uses 19 other different kind of apps throughout the month. So they are over-indexed on health and fitness, weather, travel, these kind of category versus a non-premium user who's probably using only, much lesser apps as compared to a non-premium user. We have numbers about some of these other categories as well, might or might not be relevant for you. Just being sensitive of the time, I'm not going to cover all of these categories, but we have all of the data. You'll also get a QR code at the end of these slides so you can access these numbers. Yeah, so just, trying to, put it all together. I think we talk about the enormity of the independent app ecosystem, how the ecosystem is important, and how you can find the right user in the right intent in this ecosystem, right? I'll just talk shortly about Moloko, just going to take a couple of minutes of what we do and how all of this becomes relevant to you when you work with Moloko. So we are built for app marketers. Moloko is a programmatic DSP. We do both user acquisition and re-engagement. We are powered by AI. Don't come at me. We did not add AI very recently. Moloko literally means machine learning company. So we've been doing this for 13 odd years, ever since we started back in 2013. And we are extremely focused on outcomes. What that means is that we find you the right intent user. What the AI really doing here is finding the user who's gonna transact on your app, finding the right probability of the intention, and then delivering that user to you. So it's highly, highly focused on outcomes. How we are different as compared to some of the other channels or other DSP out there. Firstly, the kind of technology depth which we have. The company is 60% engineers and very less people like me. We are also very, very impartial and transparent when it comes to the kind of visibility. Where did the ad show? What was the user journey? Did the user click on the ad or no? The kind of visibility and clarity which we are able to give. I've worked across multiple other channels, as you've seen, but I don't think that nobody gives you the kind of clarity and visibility which Moloko does. So very transparent and built on right principles and products, as you can see. 90% of Moloko ads are spent on CPA and ROAS campaigns. As I mentioned, we are very, very outcome focused. So we don't believe in showing unnecessary ads to the users and just burning up your money. It's all about showing the ads to the right user and optimizing for the transaction, optimizing for completing a certain level, optimizing for re-engaging a user, placing in a very high credible bucket or a cluster of your users, right? And just wanted to point out that we work with some of the largest brands globally. These are some of the testimonies of, of the success we've sort of achieved in the last decade or so. We've also been, year after year, consistently ranked very well by all our, all the third-party MMPs, etc., like Singular, AppsFlyer, and have always been in one of the top performing channels across all of these rankings. I have my great team sitting in this room today. You can just look at all of these faces. If this is something which you think will be useful for you, we can partner together. Feel free to come by and talk to us. We'll be happy to explain more about the product and the services to you. And finally, this is the report I was talking about. You saw about fintech as a category, how the users behave in that category. If you think those numbers would be helpful for your business, feel free to scan this QR code, download the report, go through it, and feel free to buzz any of us and reach out to us for more answers to your queries. Thank you so much.